Ukraine was invaded. It was attacked completely premeditated fashion by the Russians, unprovoked, and we've been telling them, all of us in NATO, from February of last year, don't hit targets in Russia. It's fine to hit targets in Ukraine in your own self-defense, thus further destroying your own country, but don't hit targets in Russia. Now, the Ukrainians have hit a few targets. I think we should let them hit more. I'm not saying attack the suburbs of Moscow, but I am saying more damage to Russia on the Russian side of the border may wake the aggressor up a little bit.
Moscow has announced that it's imposing sanctions on the movements of British diplomats within the country in response to what it calls the terrorist and hostile actions of Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia's warned that any ships travelling to Ukrainian ports on the Black Sea will be seen as potential military targets. That's after the Kremlin pulled out of a deal to allow for safe passage of grain exports. I spoke to former US National Security Advisor under Donald Trump and former US Ambassador to the UN, John Bolton. And I started by asking him what he thinks a meeting of the UN Security Council tomorrow morning could lead to.
Basically, the answer is nothing, because any resolution, any statement might want to make, the Russians would veto, quite likely with the support of China. So effectively, this is very similar to Cold War days when the Soviet Union would veto resolutions dealing with it. It's one reason why the Council was sidelined for the Cold War. It just was not functioning. And I'm afraid between Russia and China, we're kind of back in that situation today. So an opportunity for the Council to debate what has happened. And I'm sure an overwhelming number of members will condemn the Russian move. But at the end of the day, the Council is not going to do anything.
Russia's also warned that any ships travelling to Ukrainian ports on the Black Sea are going to be seen as potential military targets. You say it's going to turn into a battle at sea, and I think you can probably get a hint of my frustration here, and I'm sure yours, in terms of from a worldwide perspective, the battle may head to sea, but are we at the point now where, NATO, the UN, other nations assisting in the way that they can in terms of helping out with the war effort? Are we at the point now where we can't go any further? What else is there in our locker in terms of fighting Russia?
Well, I think NATO as a whole, and the U.S. in particular, have not really adopted a coherent strategy. Instead of marshaling the resources that were needed over a year ago, deciding on what our objectives were and then proceeding that way, we've dribbled out weapons supplies to Ukraine over an extended period. So it has the appearance of not wanting Ukraine to lose, but making sure Ukraine can't win either. Look, Ukraine was invaded. It was attacked completely premeditated fashion by the Russians, unprovoked. And we've been telling them, all of us in NATO, from February of last year, don't hit targets in Russia. It's fine to hit targets in Ukraine in your own self-defense, thus further destroying your own country, but don't hit targets in Russia. Now, the Ukrainians have hit a few targets. I think we should let them hit more. I'm not saying attack the suburbs of Moscow, but I am saying more damage to Russia on the Russian side of the border may wake the aggressor up a little bit.
And what kind of damage are you talking about there?
Attacking their military staging grounds, attacking their weapons depots, attacking the means of communication and transport from Russia into Ukraine. In other words, to attack their rear military areas. The Russians are doing that to the Ukrainians, and worse than that, they're attacking Ukrainian civilians, which I'm not suggesting. But by giving the Russians a safe haven, it's rewarding their aggression.